Let me tell you how one flight, a Tuesday morning, nothing special, Philadelphia to Chicago, turned into the kind of story you can't shake loose. No matter how much you want to believe stuff like this only happens in movies or on the news. Imagine this. You're minding your business, about to take off, and suddenly, the whole cabin freezes because an 11-year-old black girl gives her last name. And the ripple effect is instant, visible, and, honestly, a little bit ugly before it turns into something more. Yeah, that happened. I was there, and I can't stop thinking about it. See, it starts with Zora, chin up, shoulders squared, navy dress, book in hand, a first-class seat. But you know she feels eyes on her from the second she steps onto the plane. The flight attendant, Marion, classic airline pro. Not much rattles her after 30 years up in the air. Goes from standard issue smile to straight up shock the moment Zora says Rockefeller. Clipboard slips, paper scatter. Everyone's silent, but you can feel a current running under every row. I remember thinking, wait, what just happened? You know what I mean? That hush when the world turns, and you're caught watching? It hadn't always been this tense. 2 hours earlier, Philadelphia International was just the usual mess. Tired parents, business travelers sipping burnt coffee. Airport staff weaving through the crowd with that particular, practiced hustle. Dr. Marcus Rockefeller, Zora's father, a man who wears grief like it's stitched to his suit lapels, walks her to the gate. Steady hand on her shoulder. First class, just like Mom always wanted. He says, and I swear you can see pride and pain fighting for space in his eyes. He tells her to be polite, observant, dignified, the Rockefeller way. Be yourself, he says, but you get the sense he knows that's harder than it sounds, especially today. As he hands her boarding pass to the agent, Brenda, friendly enough, not expecting Rockefeller, there's that flicker of surprise. Those Rockefellers? She asks. He just gives her the short answer, something about a distant family branch. Marcus watches her go with a smile that doesn't quite hide the worry lines. He's got his own battle. His wife lost to cancer 6 months ago. Now he's facing the oncologist himself. Marion introduces herself, offers orange juice, checks on Zora like she's any kid flying solo. And for a moment it's all so ordinary. But the mood shifts when Harrison Whitfield, white, polished, every inch the senior investment banker, claims the aisle seat beside her. The guy's got the kind of presence that says he's used to things going his way, and the discomfort's almost immediate. He asks, with a tight voice, if there's a mistake, shouldn't she be in another section? As if Zora's ticket must be a clerical error. Marion holds the line. First-class passengers start paying attention. The Abernathy's, an older Southern couple across the aisle, eye the scene with a kind of practiced grace, while 2 conference women behind Zora fall silent, watching the tension build. Is there a problem with having this child here? Mrs. Abernathy finally asks. Harrison says. Captain Chin steps out, listens, then turns to Zora. Your name? Zora Rockefeller. There it is. The atmosphere flips. The power of a name. Suddenly, Marion's scrambling to apologize. Harrison's blushing deep red, and every pair of eyes in the cabin is somewhere between vindication and shame. Zora, all poise, opens her book again. But if you're watching closely, you see her grip it tight, see her blink fast to keep the tears at bay. Because, really, it shouldn't take a famous name for a child to be treated with respect. After that, everything's different. Not quite meeting Zora's eyes. She accepts it with the kind of grace that makes you question your own reflexes. Thank you, she says, but you can tell she's not letting him off the hook. When Harrison tries to explain, stumbling through his own biases, Zora just says, I'm used to it. For words that land harder than any accusation. Then, turbulence hits. Zora's hands white-knuckle the armrest, and suddenly Harrison's not a businessman or a critic. He's just a guy trying to reassure a scared kid, explaining air pockets, offering distractions, talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. He confides about his own mother, lost to cancer, and for the first time, you see them both as just people, hurt and vulnerable, trying to get through a bumpy ride. You feel the air clear between them. After landing, Zora is met by her aunt, Josephine, a woman who wears dignity like armor. Back at Josephine's home, Zora unpacks, greeted by Mrs. Carter, the housekeeper who's practically family. The small rituals, placing her mother's photo on the nightstand, retelling the story to Mrs. but she's grateful someone understands. Meanwhile, Harrison goes to his business meeting, but the morning's encounter clings to him. His boss, Patricia Walton, a force herself, pushes him to talk. Find a way to validate her humanity, not just her last name. Zora's world tilts again when Marcus is hospitalized mid-treatment, and Harrison, as fate would have it, ends up on her flight back to Philadelphia. They sit together, two changed people. They talk aviation, law, grief, classical music, finding common ground where suspicion once lived. When they reach the hospital, Harrison stays just long enough to see Zora safely to her father's bedside. Their connection now something warmer, more human. 3 months later, in Chicago, Zora's a little taller, her eyes wiser. Marcus's health is uncertain, her life split between two cities, but there's hope. At a lecture by Dr. Whitfield, Harrison's mother, Zora asks a question about how personal encounters can change us. Dr. Whitfield's answer is clear. Personal encounters force us to see the world not as we imagine, but as it truly is. Harrison and Zora's friendship becomes a kind of mentorship, each teaching the other about resilience, privilege, and what it means to really see someone, not just their name, not just their face, but their story, their struggle. Josephine notes the change in Harrison, and Harrison admits, once you confront your own assumptions, you can't unsee them. As the seasons shift, so do the people in this story. Harrison keeps coming back, not because he has to, but because Zora matters. Zora finds her voice, writing essays, asking big questions, carrying her mother's wisdom forward. And somewhere in all this, in the quiet spaces between apology and forgiveness, the real lesson emerges. Growth isn't about never messing up. It's about what you do when you finally see yourself, your mistakes, your chance to be better. So, let me ask you, after hearing all this, what would you have done if you were on that flight? Have you ever been forced to question your own reflexes, your own assumptions? Because sometimes it takes a stranger's courage, a child's poise, or even just a moment of turbulence to change the direction of your story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand on privilege, justice, and how we judge who belongs. You ever have those days where the whole world feels like it's tilting and you're just trying to find your footing, only to realize you're about to walk into a whole new storm? That's exactly how it felt for Zora 3 weeks after that infamous flight, the one where her last name dropped like a stone and changed the temperature of the cabin. The kind of story that spreads among flight crews and business travelers like urban legend. But you know what? Sometimes the fallout from a moment like that isn't anger or embarrassment. It's a weird sort of opportunity, like a crack in a wall you didn't even realize you could walk through. The days in Chicago pass with a rhythm both unfamiliar and oddly comforting. Josephine's brownstone is full of sunlight and art. Her life at the university is this blend of hard edges and soft voices, and Mrs. Carter, well, she's always there with fresh cookies, old wisdom, and a knack for knowing when Zora just needs someone to sit beside her in silence. At school, Zora keeps her head down, not quite blending in, not quite an outsider, just careful. She's friendly, sure, but reserved, wary about forming attachments. Every night, she checks her phone for news from her dad, each text like a pulse beneath her skin. But life has a way of not letting you coast. One Thursday, the news comes down. Marcus Rockefeller has developed a serious infection during treatment. Josephine's voice is all business when she explains the situation. But Zora can hear the tremor beneath the calm. There are no direct flights for her that evening. You'll go tomorrow, sweetheart. I promise I'll call you the minute I know more. Mrs. Carter spends the night in Zora's room, humming old gospel under her breath. At O'Hare the next morning, Zora feels like she's living in a loop. Same terminal, same gate, same flight number. Except this time, she's not alone in the waiting area. There's Harrison Whitfield, of all people, looking lost in a spreadsheet, his suit jacket just a little rumpled. Hair out of place in a way that says he hasn't slept. Zora hesitates, then walks right up, because avoidance has never really been her thing. Mr. Whitfield, she says, and it's like she's startled a wild animal. He fumbles, recovers, recognizes her. She tells him why she's flying home. For a moment, he's just a guy, not a platinum member or a gatekeeper. Just a human being who understands what it's like to worry about a parent. They end up seated together, and the flight takes on a different tone, awkward at first, but then, almost by accident, the conversation opens up. Harrison asks about her school, her art, her fears. Zora, in turn, asks about his work, about his mother, about what it was like to grow up in a city like Detroit, where his own mother taught kids who looked like her, kids who had to fight for every inch of respect. Halfway through the flight, Sandra, the flight attendant, mistakes them for father and daughter. Harrison laughs, really laughs, for the first time in weeks. Zora responds with her signature calm. "Oh, Mr. Whitfield isn't my father. He's a friend of the family." They share a look, half embarrassed, half amused. And maybe that's the twist, right there. The lines between strangers, adversaries, and allies are thinner than we like to admit. When the plane lands, Zora finally lets down her guard, asking Harrison to wait while she goes in to see her dad. When Marcus recognizes Harrison, there's a moment of loaded silence. Then, unexpectedly, gratitude. That her brother will hold on a little longer, that the world will give them some kind of break. But the world doesn't always oblige. Over the next month, meanwhile, is changed in small, unspoken ways. He attends Dr. Whitfield's Art as Witness lecture, where Zora's question about personal encounters shaping justice becomes the centerpiece of the Q&A. He finds himself reflecting on the girl who made him see his own blind spots, who forced him to ask what it means to really belong somewhere, or why some people never learn until they're forced to. And the world keeps spinning. Zora wins a small essay contest, her piece about the flight earning a quiet mention at assembly. Josephine's colleagues start asking about the poised girl at her side. Marcus, from his hospital bed, insists on keeping up family routines as best he can, video calls at dinner, nightly check-ins. Always reminding Zora to carry yourself with dignity, but let yourself feel. Then comes another twist. The Art Institute announces a new exhibit on names, identity, and the Black experience in America. Dr. Whitfield asks Zora to contribute an essay. At the reception, Zora stands before a crowded room, reading her words aloud, her voice steady. And then you have to decide what you're going to do with it. The applause is warm, genuine, but the moment that stays with everyone comes after. When Harrison, standing quietly at the back, approaches and thanks Zora, not as a Rockefeller, not as a special passenger, but simply as herself. "You changed me," he admits. "I thought I was past all that, but I wasn't. Thank you for not letting me off the hook." And Zora, only 12 but carrying the weight of generations, just smiles that tired, wise smile. "Growth has to start somewhere," she says. Better late than never. The next weeks are a blur. Marcus's condition stabilizes, then wavers. Josephine finds herself calling her brother late at night, sharing stories about Zora's small victories. Harrison arranges a scholarship fund in Elena Whitfield's name for kids who, like Zora, have to cross boundaries just to get noticed. But you want a real ending? That's the thing, right? There isn't one. Zora still worries about her dad. Harrison still wrestles with his own privilege. Josephine keeps fighting her quiet battles at the university and at home. Sometimes Zora misses her mother so much it aches. Sometimes she feels guilty for the friendships she's forming, for the laughter that returns unexpectedly on slow Sunday afternoons. And on another flight, another Tuesday, maybe somewhere over the Midwest, a flight attendant pauses before checking a manifest and remembers, just for a moment, that everyone has a story, a burden, a name. Maybe it's enough to make her treat the kid in seat 2 a little differently. Maybe not. But that's why these stories matter, because they stick, because they echo, because they force us to look again. So, I'll ask you, if you made it this far, where do you stand now? Do you believe people can really change? Have you ever judged someone before you knew their story? Leave your thoughts below, because I think we need more of these conversations. Messy, complicated, unfinished, if we're ever going to make it out of turbulence and into clear skies. And if you want to hear the next chapter in Zora's journey, or your own, don't forget to subscribe. This story, it's still unfolding every single day.